In this video, we'll be directly creating a PerformanceMax campaign on the Shopify platform. What do we need for this? We need to go to our Merchant Center next. Yes, I know that you can create a PerformanceMax campaign directly from this plugin, and that's also possible. But if we click this button, it just takes us straight to Merchant Center, so I don't really see the point in bothering with it too much. What do we need for this? Go into our Merchant Center next. Find the marketing section here, then advertising campaigns, and right here click the Create button. They're really trying to push on me directly. The creation of a campaign with billing data. So here you can just click skip, but if not, then you'll have to enter the billing date. But for me, for example, it just let me skip it now. What do we do here? We set the daily budget, whatever it might be on average. Depending on your average bill, you can set it to the equivalent of $8 to $15. You can set more, you can set less, but honestly, it doesn't really make sense. The higher the cost per click in your niche, the higher your budget probably needs to be. So, the size of your budget is directly affected by your average cost per click. Here, I'll set it to the equivalent of about $10, which will be a little less. Although it's actually recommending a bit more to me. But a recommendation is just a recommendation. That's a whole other story. Alright, let's name our campaign. And click Create. After that, we go to our ad account and refresh the page. And right here, in the campaign section, we can already see the name of our campaign. I recommend that you pause it first, because we're still going to adjust some settings. And then turn it on, so the learning process doesn't start earlier than it should. The first thing we do is go to the All section, which is called Other Settings, but they're actually very important. Usually, ad campaigns created from the Zip Merchant Center are set up for all countries, for all territories. So be careful when choosing the geography where your ads will be shown. If needed, specify areas, regions, states, you can even set radiuses, just so you know. For example, if I know. Time to get started. Let's check. This is how we're writing it now. There you go. Include post office 20 miles. And if I want kilometers instead of miles, you can set the minimum radius to 1 kilometer. See? So, play around with your geography settings to find what works best for you. In these settings, for the location option, you need to select presence if you want your ads to be shown strictly in certain locations. Save it. As for languages, look, for Ukraine it's not really critical. You can leave all languages selected. That's because nowadays, people come and go from different countries, and they really do speak various languages. Polish, German, French, there are a lot of languages. So even if you leave all the languages selected, it won't be a mistake. But if you're advertising in certain other countries, Poland, the UK, Australia, Germany, any country, it's better to choose the languages your users actually speak. For example, in London, England, it wouldn't make sense to select the Welsh language or, say, Hindi, right? Unless you're targeting a specific audience. But if, for example, we're selling some flashy gold jewelry in the States, then it's better to target Latinos. Don't exclude Spanish, and definitely include Portuguese. Same thing, let's put it this way. The choice of language is determined by the language your customers speak. How does Google determine what language your customers speak? Based on the language of the queries they use. So, if a person uses Polish and you set Polish as the targeting language, they will find it. But if a person usually Googles, for example, in Ukrainian, and you set Polish as the language, then in Poland, for example, your ad won't be shown to them. So keep this nuance in mind and only select the languages you actually need. If you're worried, just pick the top local language. For example, if we're talking about Poland, choose Polish. You can also add English, and if you need to, you can add Ukrainian if you're targeting Ukrainians as well. Regarding these object optimizations, at first I recommend them to you. I plan to turn them off in the beginning. What do I mean by in the beginning? For example, the first few weeks, 2 or 3. If you want, you can add them a bit later. Right now, we've created a type of ad campaign called Feed Only, and we would like it, first and foremost, to run as an analog of smart shopping campaigns with the functionality of dynamic remarketing and so on. There are fewer issues and questions about your assets, because some people make mistakes, like grammatical errors. Exclamation marks aren't allowed, or, for example, someone is selling jewelry and crosses. Google considers that a religious topic and restricts it, or cosmetics with certain ingredients. So at the beginning, you can exclude them and check how much of the lower funnel your feed can actually capture in sales. And then you can layer on other meanings or elements. So it won't be a mistake at the start. If you want to keep them, go ahead and keep them. But I would exclude them. If you have a strong desire not to show up for your own brands, then you can add them. But again, if the account is brand new, collect statistics by any means or methods, even for your branded queries. And then you can exclude them later. So, brand exclusions are located here. As for excluding certain age categories, I also don't recommend excluding them at the start, only if you are absolutely 100% sure. For now, I don't see any exclusions here. For devices, it's better to exclude TVs, but for some reason, when I was recording this video in English, I had that exclusion there, but here it's not present. Well, maybe there are such nuances too, so exclude television there. TV, if you happen to see this block, exclude it. Next, let's move on to the basics. Goals. Be sure to select them now. It's better to choose purchases, because there are certain ad accounts where, without a selected goal, the performance is non-existent. For some reason, it doesn't even recognize the main purchase goal as the primary one. Next is bidding, our bidding strategy. Look, for launching performance, you only have 2 bidding strategies. One of them is for conversions. And the other is for value, meaning your revenue. Which one works better? There are a lot of different opinions about what works better and what works worse. Look, I'll explain the difference between them, and then you can choose what suits you best. Bidding for conversions works really well when your average check is up to $15, maximum $20. Plus, the product is very simple, ordinary, without any exclusive features or being in some premium segment. That is, it's inexpensive, in demand, and people buy it quite easily. It's a win-win option, but at first, don't set a CPA so that it doesn't accidentally look for a more expensive conversion. But if your product is a bit more expensive, then usually you can still launch on conversions and try to easily gather. Analytics. If there are no conversions at all in the first 10 to 14 days, there's no point in continuing. You need to switch to conversion value. But with this strategy, I would immediately recommend setting this target ROAS. It's not very difficult to calculate. What do you need to do? Just use a very simple formula. It goes like this: 1 divided by your margin. This means how much gross revenue we need to generate per unit spent, given our margin, right? So how can this be done? How do you calculate it? Because the most common mistake people make, for some reason, even though it seems logical to me, but it's actually illogical, is that they use the net margin before deducting advertising expenses. But no one is stopping you from slicing that margin by a certain percentage, right? So if you have a margin of 40 to 60%, you don't have to give all of it away. Google. So remember, you are the one managing all of this. For now, Google doesn't understand what your margin figures are, or at what values your advertising pays off or not. So you can break down the margin value into smaller parts and calculate it right here. So keep that in mind. Or, as a third option when setting this target ROAS, or as a second option when setting ROAS, what you can do is focus on average indicators, more general ones. For example, in Poland or Ukraine, it can be 500 to 600. If we're talking about other countries, like Germany or France, the starting figures might be 250 to 300. In some cases, you can set it even higher. But what I see in Google is that most advertisers don't set it at all. Target ROAS. Since Google is trying to increase its spending, everything is shifting towards lower and lower sides, so try setting certain values at first, and then adjust as you go. See if you need to decrease or increase them. Don't be afraid to make adjustments. This value is just to see how the automation will react to this situation. Well, in my case, let's set it to 350% and save it. And now, the only thing left is the budget. I mentioned at the beginning, can you set it? A budget equivalent to $8 to $15, and it all depends on the cost per click you get at first. The smaller the budget, and if you're also using the maximize conversion strategy, there's a high risk that performance will go after very cheap traffic. And there's no guarantee that this very cheap traffic will actually be profitable. So, if you see very low cost per click, that should be a red flag for you. How do you find out your cost per click? It's very simple. You go into Settings, Planning, Keyword Planner, and enter either your website here, right here. Just take your website directly. I can show you, for example, using my own website. Just keep in mind, though, that it's just a business card site. Where's the result? For example, you can pick Ukrainian there, I don't know. This is the Netherlands. Club Ukrainian, Dutch, Russian, and we can also select English right away. Here, for example, you see, my site isn't optimized at all. Here, you see, to card, Macu products. Where's the call to action price located? It's located in these sections. That is, the page mid, low range, high range. See? And here you can immediately get some average values for yourself. Prices, call to action. So the higher it is, higher means, for how much? If it goes over $1.50, definitely, then the starting budget can be around $50 to $60. The lower your cost per click, for example, if it's under $1, the budget can actually be much smaller. Why do we set a lower budget at the beginning? In order to train the AI very merrily, very precisely, to find your conversions as accurately as possible. With such targeting, most likely, you'll be getting very cheap conversions, really, because it will keep delivering further. And you'll be feeding it right away. The ad account with useful analytics. You should consider useful analytics as AI. The AI learns in such a way that you give it data and also specify what needs to be done with that data. If we don't set up targeting algorithms, then you need to specify what you want to get from it. When can you increase the budget? You can try increasing it even after just 3 to 4 days. Increase it if you're getting very few impressions, that is, very few views. There's no budget ceiling. There are no optimal budget formulas based on the number of products or anything like that either. Because this system comes from regular e-commerce, and even there, this approach doesn't really work anymore. So you can start with these budgets or just set an average amount. For example, let's take the UK market, or Germany, or France. You can start with $20 to $30. That's also a decent starting budget, and you can always increase it later. It makes sense to increase it in cases when you see feedback coming in, meaning it starts collecting those same metrics. If people start buying, then it makes even more sense to increase the budget. How often should you increase it? If you see that the return on your ad campaign is right on the edge, meaning it's almost not paying off, then most likely you should increase it by about 20%. If you see that there's a margin, a buffer, for example, your break-even point is, say, 6, but you're getting 10, you can increase it much more, even double it. Raising the budget by that much won't be super critical. Just remember that from the moment you make changes, like budget, structure, or, for example, bits for products, there's at least a 3 to 4 day buffer period when both the old and new strategies overlap. So keep that in mind. Where can you find your products if you suddenly need to select only certain ones? We go to our object groups and click on listing groups. Here, I believe, all the products will be shown. I have just one product item, but you might have more, or maybe not. You can filter them by product type or by brand. If you want to filter by product name, then you select Item ID. Here, you look for that specific product item, just so you know. If you happen to have tags, you can also use those. So this is the basic set of options for how you can set up your performance and start working. On new accounts, with automatic payments, there is a certain delay while it processes, before it starts showing ads. Yes, there are delays, so keep that in mind. But it will start displaying and gaining traction on its own, and there's no problem with that. That's why, in general, I recommend that most businesses try to set up performance campaigns on their own. You'll need a specialist or someone to handle this in cases where you don't have time for it, or you've already hit a ceiling and don't understand how to optimize or scale it further. In most cases now, the ad campaigns that Google offers you are quite high quality and very easy to set up. So, in this part of the video, what did we do together? That's right, we set up a PerformanceMax campaign with a feed type. We quickly went over the important settings and touched a bit on bidding strategies. If you need a more detailed explanation about them, just let me know in the comments. For Shopify or for a specific market, make sure to specify the geo right away, where you'll be selling, the structure, and what product you're offering. That way, at least you'll have some idea of how to navigate all this. And basically, that's it.